Welcome to Veteach. Today's class we will be discussing on the next creational pattern, builder. This is in the scope of an object rather than a class. So we'll be talking about specifically an object creational scope builder. What is the intent? A builder is used in the case to create separate the construction of a complex object from its representation so that the same construction process can create different representation. The word itself is able to give us a hint when do we use a builder. A builder is used to create an instance and save that process, and the same process will be used for creating multiple different representations of a object. So to do that we use a builder. What is the motivation? I'll be specifically talking about an example RTF, rich text format, where I have different formats being used for storing a text in different languages or text formats. Whatever the case is, there is an RTF reader that would like to convert RTF to many text formats. So one text being read and being converted into different formats. So that's our constraint here. So how do we solve this? How do we solve this? The solution by using a builder is very simple, that we will configure our RTF reader with a text converter object. So I'll create an RTF reader class and merge it with a converter object also. So when an RTF reader reads a text, it needs to start converting into a specific format. That specific format is treated as a subclass of text converters. So when we use that, we'll be able to generate different conversions and relatively save them in different formats. For that, we will be implementing a text widget converter. A text widget converter specifically takes a specific area of text and then converts that into a specific format. So to do that, we will use complex UI based objects being used to edit and convert those text areas. So why do we use a builder? Specifically, we use a builder to create an instance part by part. You can see here the common manner to create an instance is usually by using a constructor. Yes, we do it with constructor. So there are two methods of creating an instance. One is by taking a general method of implementing a constructor, and two is by taking a specific value or a specific instantiation of a object. So that also can create an instance. Like here you can see that there is a public class room with area, windows and string purpose. There is a different attributes being applied here. So when I am trying to create, there is a room constructor. So this is a notation for representing a constructor, and second is specifically instantiating a row by specific format used here. Like I'm trying to define an area, its windows and its purpose. So all being passed as arguments. So as you see here, as I pass these arguments are defined partially. So they cannot be determined fully. So when a builder is used, a builder will help us to determine multiple creations of that object without knowing determining its arguments completely. So that is the help that we have out of a builder. So we can't control the whole process of a creation of an instance. So that is another advantage why I use a builder. So when if this process is not being used, yes, that becomes a bad abstraction process, which will amplify the process of creating an object. So that is no more a flexibility for us. So uses of a builder. So one example, as we have referred, I can use it for RTF converter, or I can use it for a GUI, graphic user interface. Related patterns, you can see that there is a factory method relatively being used because a virtual constructor can be implemented here. So there is a constructor implementation for a builder. So a factory method can be used, or a prototype can be used where it clones, help us to clone themselves. And there is a singleton which creates a single instance only. Yeah, an object, a builder is specifically used to create an instance. When that instance is single, then I can use a singleton. So that's in a nutshell a builder and an object scope, where it helps us to create objects without in two methods, where a constructor method can be implemented, or a general object creation method can be implemented with the help of arguments. The third design pattern that we'll be specifically talking is a factory method in class creational scope. What is a factory method? We have been applying that a factory method is in relation with the previous two, abstract factory and a builder. So what is the intention of using a factory method? The intent: define an interface for creating an object, but let subclasses decide which class to instantiate. So the intent is very clear. It helps us to create an interface for creating an object, but it will let you to select by yourself a subclass to for which you would like to instantiate. That selection is the advantage with a factory method. It also lets class defer the instantiation of subprocess. Yes, subclasses. You can instantiate all subclasses, or you can defer the instantiation of few subclasses, which is also possible with a factory method. So this is also known as a virtual constructor. Motivation: we will bring in a problem where we will try to create a framework which is using abstract classes, a framework which is using abstract classes to define and maintain relationship between objects. So there are different objects, and those objects to be defined and maintained in the framework. So that's our problem. In that framework, when these objects has to be related together, they have to be initially created. So creation of objects as well has to be taken up by the framework. So there is a lot for a framework to do. So when the creation of objects and their defining and maintaining and giving them relations, all that is the problem here. But in order to instantiate, in order to create an object, the framework only knows the classes, but not the abstract classes. So which is creating a hurdle for the process of creating classes or instantiation. The factory method, to bring in the knowledge of how a factory method solves this problem, a factory method encapsulates knowledge of which subclass to create, moves this knowledge out of the framework. So it creates, but that knowledge is moved out of the framework, which um, which simplifies the process of creating an objects. That's our motivations. How are we trying to solve? There is an application. There is a my application being instantiation. So an application has a create document, new document, open document, operations being implemented. So when I say that, there is an document, equivalent document being created with operations open, close, save, and revert. That's very simple. But with my application, there is a my document being created. So it creates a new my document, where an application creates a document. So that's our motivation and how we are trying to solve it. Applicability. So we are trying to apply factory method pattern when a class can't anticipate the class of objects it must create. So which should be taken and which should be instantiated, that is not known to it. Two, a class wants its subclasses to specify the objects. A class wants its subclasses to specify the objects it creates. And third, classes delegate responsibility. That's the major role. Because when we said uh, the objects needs to interact with each other in the specification of our problem, we said that the objects needs to have relationships among them. That is what the factory method is trying to concentrate by delegating responsibilities of one several subclasses. That can be done with the help of a uh, factory method. The structure, you can see here, the structure is very simple to understand, that there is a creator, and it has been a concrete creator has been um, generalized, a specific and more generalized. There is a product and a concrete product. So I see here the operations are very specific, and the relationship being used is a general and more specialized classes. So that's a structure. So what are the participants? There are four participants. There is a product, there is a creator, there is a concrete product, and a concrete product. So four participants you can see. So in a nutshell, when do we use a factory method? A factory method is used whenever you would like to instantiate an object without knowing or defining some subclasses. It allows you to select a subclass and then instantiate that particular subclass. That's the major advantage that we reap out of implementing a factory method. Thank you.